remember, we talked before and many times, dedicated whole segments to the manufactured part of this crisis, if you want to call it that. And there is a part that is completely self-induced. And a lot of get this kind of battered wife syndrome where you have people that are looking at this and the government creates a problem. And unfortunately, they look to the government for the solution. And this is why I call the state and the laws and the mandates and stuff that they implement, I look at them as abusers because it's classic abuser behavior. And by abuser behavior, I'm referencing the fact that they will say that, okay, you're making me do this, right? And have you, I guess there's some gaslighting in there as well, have you thinking that you're part of the problem, or not me, but you get what it is that I'm saying. They blame it on everybody else. So it's like they create an issue that doesn't have to be an issue. It's only an issue because they create it, and they need to present themselves as those guys that are presenting a solution. And then they say, well, we now have to do this and punish you even more, and you're the ones that are making us do that. That's the part of this all that's manufactured. So when you look at some of these self-inflicted wounds, that's what you need to look at. Here's another example of this when we're looking at which a lot of these guys tend to be volunteers or what have you. But looking at this, and this is what it says, title from the Blaze, Chris Field. It's the FDNY prepares to close 20% of fire companies and pull a fifth of ambulances as COVID vaccine deadline looms. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio declared last week that all city workers, including firefighters and cops, the former, I would argue, whatever. Again, a lot of those guys operate voluntarily. Either way, all of this shit should be privatized. I want to make sure I preface that. But I do want to just use this to kind of point out where this issue is stemming from. They have to get their first COVID vaccine by 5 p.m. on October 29th. So by 5 p.m. today that I'm shooting this, you may be seeing this afterwards, but they're going to have to be required to basically be vaccinated. And you've seen protests, and here's a bunch of them now that are like, nah, I'm not doing this. This is not something that I want. You had us working front lines to do all of this shit in the previous year, and now we are being demonized and we're being forced to do something that we don't want to necessarily do. The mayor's mandate, the deadline for which was extended following ongoing disputes with workers' unions, also ordered that the city employees who fail to start their vaccine regimen by November 1st will be put on unpaid leave until they can get proof of vaccination. With the deadline looming, the New York Fire Department announced Wednesday that only about 2/3, so only 65% of its firefighters, fire officer, and EMS workers have been vaccinated. So now the FDNY is preparing to close up to 20% of all Gotham Fire companies and to pull 20% of its ambulances out of service. So that's to coincide with roughly what? So you're looking at roughly 35 or so percent of them not being vaccinated. That number may or may not increase. Probably will just a little bit. I don't know about how much, depending on if they're going to hold the line or not. So that's forcing them because, again, they're not going to have the operational capacity. If these people do not work, then they are going to end up closing some of these down. So you got with ambulances. This is New York City after all, or New York after all, and 20%, of course, is a lot. And Fire Commissioner Daniel lamented that the situation, blaming the portion of our workforce that has refused to comply with the vaccine mandate for all city employees. He vowed that FDNY will use all means at our disposal, including mandatory overtime. Wow. Mandatory overtime, mutual aid from other EMS providers, and significant changes to the schedule of our members to make up for the staffing shortages. So basically, they're going to force mandatory overtime. So, hey, this is going to be funny. So all of y'all that got the jab with the promise of getting a job, y'all motherfuckers about to be working like a goddamn motherfucker. Is basically what's going to have to happen in order for them to make up for the shortages. Look, guys, this is self-inflicted. This is the government saying this is not something that they have to do. It doesn't even make sense that they're doing it. They don't have to do this, but they're deciding that these people need to be vaccinated. Okay. People say no. Then you end up with a staffing shortage, which is what we're seeing really all across the country right now. I know that a lot of the mainstream media likes to put it into other contexts. Oh, it's because of low wages. Oh, that's why we have these. Shut the fuck up. No, you have a bunch of shortages because of a combination of different things. Partially this and what we're dealing with now, as well as the welfare state is, and where you pay people to sit on their assholes. That's why you have a bunch of staffing shortages. This is the part that's self-inflicted. Okay. This does not have to happen. It only happens because the government has set a rule that is requiring people in a lot of instances to have their employees be vaccinated. In some cases, their patrons even have to be vaccinated. People decide that they don't want to do that. Those are people that are able-bodied. You've seen them work through the height of the pandemic. They are able-bodied and are willing and ready to work. You're just making it illegal for them to do so effectively. Whether you consider a mandate a law, that's neither here nor there. Effectively is what more so I'm referring to. This doesn't have to happen. So when I talk about the part that's manufactured, that's what I'm referring to. Because this is something that is self-inflicted. No, you didn't have to do this. You decided to. You must join our cult despite you not wanting to. You need to do it. And if you don't do it, well, you can't work, and we'll send, I guess, it's funny. Who would you send in the event that they kept working? Who would you send? Who would you send? I guess you send their colleagues. You have to send their coworkers to go arrest them or some shit. I don't know. Now, I hate for stuff like this to have to happen. But this may be what has to happen for people to get it. And some folks are going to have to go without. And I can imagine where, in this instance, definitely when you're dealing with ambulances and whatever. And will they arrive? Will they not? Will they have the staffing to be able to take care of someone that's in an emergency? I would hope they are. But I'd hate for people to have to go without. But we're in this odd era where that's what ends up happening for people to let go of this mandate BS. I hate to hear that. I really do, because that comes with its other sets of consequences. And that what they'll try to do is when something like that happens. So say if there are some emergency and these guys are replying very late or whatever it is, they're going to then blame the unvaccinated. That's what they're going to do. They're going to say it's y'all's fault. Even though, again, the unvaccinated were willing to work. You just didn't want them to. But that's how it is. These guys are insane. In which it's a classic abuser behavior where they say it's your fault. You're making them do this. You're the one that's at fault here because you didn't want to get a jab for something that had a 99% survival rate. I hate that this type of stuff has to happen. So these companies have to go without or these people have to go without. But that may be what has to get us on the other side. And I've talked about the mass noncompliance anyway. But just always keep in mind, as they gaslight you when this type of shit happens, remind them loudly and proudly that that's their fault. They're the ones that have made it this way, not you. It is not your fault because you decided, whether you have natural immunity or whatever the reason is, or just because you want to build the natural immunity, whatever it is. You don't really require you're not required to answer these guys anyway. None of your goddamn business is good enough. But don't allow them to gaslight you into thinking that it's your fault because you decided not to do what they wanted you to do. You just watched a clip from our podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.